To be joined in Beijing, Tu Xinchuan, Dean of the China Institute for WTO Studies at the University of International Business and Economics. In Washington, D.C., William Li, the chief economist at the Milken Institute. Gentlemen, welcome to both of you. The latest policies coming out in the U.S. regarding tariffs on Chinese products, especially EVs, solar panels, and etc., has made quite a stir internationally. Now, Professor Tu, as someone who has been looking deeply into China's trade with the U.S. over the decades, what do you make of the nature and the impact?
For now, I think the current increased tariffs are mainly on Chinese new energy products. And according to the statistics, last year we export almost 18 billion US dollars products of those covered products. And especially the main target is EV cars, electric vehicles. And actually in last year, we only exported 10,000, almost 10,000 cars to the United States. So for now, I think the exact impact of those tariffs on Chinese exports is quite limited. But you know, the new energy industry is a very promising industry and a very important industry. So some argue that the U.S. tariffs are so-called preemptive to prevent Chinese products entering the U.S. market. So in the midterm or long-term run, the impact will be larger than right now. So the problem is the U.S. is trying to cut to exclude Chinese products from the U.S. market, this very big and growing market in the future.
I see. Mr. Li, what do you make of the nature and the impact so far?
Professor Tu get a very good analysis. Right now, we're talking about $18 billion worth of goods that are subject to tariffs and new tariffs, compared to over $300 billion worth of Chinese imports that are coming into the United States. So really, it's a very small share. And if you really dig into it, those $18 billion, 15 billion of it, or 13 billion of it, is on lithium batteries, and the other 5 billion is on assorted other things from medical equipment to other products. But the key impact is going to be on the lithium batteries, and that right now is the official U.S. line is that the tariffs are put in place as a protective measure to protect the investments that we've been making into onshoring a lot of the industries that China is so efficient in, and trying to develop our own domestic industries. And right now, it's a way of allowing these industries to develop in the United States without the strong competition that would come from Chinese imports. So in a way, it's what they call an infant industry argument. We have very infant industries that are barely capable of being able to produce a lot of these equipment, and China is in some ways is being asked to stay out until we are able to be more competitive.
What is the nature of this policy besides the official rhetorics?
I personally think it's to give President Biden some political capital to go against former President Trump, especially in the industrial states of America. Pennsylvania, right now, President Trump is leading in a lot of the Rust Belt border states that were pivotal in last election. And right now, he seems to be ahead in Arizona, Nevada, some of but Pennsylvania is also a critical industry where a lot of the steel production is taking place. So again, part of the tariffs on steel and aluminum have been put in place. So a lot of the sectors that President Biden is trying to protect is to try to garner more votes and to increase his votes in these very important states for the next election.
But the question really is, what does it mean when the U.S. is trying to exert, for example, 100% tariffs on China's electronic vehicles, even though the number is small at this moment? But what does that mean for bilateral trade rules and for multilateral trade rules as well, for example, at the WTO?
Yeah, I think the WTO used to play a very important role in keeping world trade smooth. When members have consensus about the trade liberalization. So at that time, all countries, all members believe that liberalizing trade is beneficial for themselves. So they implement those rules very well. In 2001, China was
Which the United States was the strongest advocate, one could argue, during that time, isn't it?
Yes, yes. Especially in 1995, actually 30 years ago, the WTO was established under the leadership of the United States. At that time, the US was advocating multilateral trade liberalization. So at that time, also the US was following WTO rules uh, clearly. But now, when China has become a very uh, serious competitor to the United States, and the U.S. is afraid of some competition from China, then the U.S. choose to ignore those rules and to implement trade policy, trade protectionist measures to protect their own industries from Chinese competition. Then the U.S. just ignore the WTO rules.
Now, Professor Tu, what does the latest move coming from the Biden administration mean for the earlier, already started from the Trump administration, the trade war against China? What would they mean for China? Will China do tit for tat? If not, what does that mean also? Whether Chinese government will be able to answer its credibility issue to its own industries if there are going to be trade wars continued between China and the United States. What does that mean for the two economies and economies at large elsewhere as well? Professor Tu.
Yes, of course, the Trump administration initiated the trade war against China. Actually, at the beginning, we had some expectations that the Biden administration will change something, will maybe probably cancel some tariffs. But actually, it didn't happen in the last 3 or 4 years. And actually, this move, this new action, as you said, escalated trade war, imposing even more and higher tariffs on Chinese products, which are actually some of them were not covered by Trump tariffs. So it's definitely an escalation, and I'm afraid that this kind of trade war will go on for a while. And for Chinese response, it's really difficult. I mean, actually, in the after Trump's trade war, China retaliated significantly and very quickly. But this time, I think one difference is that the scale is much smaller. It's only 18 billion US dollars.
Mr. Li, now, we understand there are sectors from the U.S. industries that disagree with the latest policy and have been working over the past months, if not a year, with the Biden administration to convey their ideas. So this, if one could say, symbolic policy to increase tariffs, some even to 100%, what does that mean to these industries in their future cooperation potential with China? Will China and U.S., when it comes to these new energy sector and IT sector, be decoupled, at least rhetorically and policy-wise, by politicians alone?
You bring up a very important point, and maybe to tone down the rhetoric, $18 billion, of which $13 billion on lithium batteries, seems to me not a war or even an escalation of a pre-existing war. It really is a way of readjusting the kind of subsidies that we need to put in place here in the United States. What is important for China and U.S. relations is that these tensions, and as Professor Tu rightly pointed out, the retaliation, the tit for tat under the Trump administration led to nothing. It didn't lead to benefits to either country. But what would have led to benefit was an expansion of the trade talks that would have entered into phase 2 and phase 3 of the trade talks that were started under President Trump. Unfortunately, President Biden didn't continue those in good faith as we had hoped. And we now, 4 years later, don't have a trade agreement between the United States and China. So in a way, there were initial efforts made to patch WTO, patch the world trade framework in a way that recognizes the reality of the United States and China, the largest trading partners in the world, and we should have an agreement between the two of us that establishes a framework that can be used for everybody else. Now we have sort of unilateral protectionism all around the world, including Europe, including South America, all over the world, because of the failure to have a trade framework. But one of the things that, as your question asks, is that many industries in the United States have been trying behind the scenes to avoid this tariff and non-tariff barrier approach, and to try to have talks that will lead to a trade framework of the sort that was started under President Trump. And right now, the lithium industry, we recognize that even if we find lithium here in the United States, we still have to process it in China. And nobody in the United States wants to have a lithium processing plant built in the United States. So that reality has to come home, and we need to have clear set of rules by which intellectual property and trade necessities that match the comparative advantage of U.S. and China to come forth. And so far, discussions have not gone that way. Instead, they've gone the political battle, because it's an election year in the United States, into a tough talk against China. And Trump and Biden are both trying to out-tough each other.
Professor Tu, we understand that China's EV sector, just for an example, has its advantage in both technology scale and also in terms of having a supply chain support. And that has been recognized by, for example, the latest discussions between Chancellor of Germany and Prime Minister of Sweden. Meanwhile, I've been talking to Australian business people. They are very excited about that. They want to take advantage of that. You also see that in the Asia-Pacific region elsewhere. Latest talks I had with the Malaysian Chamber of Commerce president also indicated the same. So what does that mean if the U.S. as the largest economy refuse to tap into these resources that is available from China? Well, others, at least some of the others, are quite enthusiastic about it. But at the same time, we also understand that U.S., as some experts say, the Biden administration made this latest policy also with an effort to let or encourage Europe to follow suit. So how is China articulating this policy's impact, not only from China-U.S. framework, but also beyond?
The world market should be more open and globalized. And especially, as I said, the green transformation is beneficial for the whole world. Of course, when a new industry emerges, there will be more competition. Especially, there is a competition between EVs and the traditional fossil fuel car industry. But this transformation is, as I said, is beneficial, generally beneficial for the whole world. So we have to accept this reality. And actually, in the past, in history, there have been such kind of transformation between old and new industries. And at the beginning, there will be some leading companies or leading countries. It happens. I think it's natural and economically. So I think currently the U.S. reactions is kind of overreactive. So I think also there are some space for cooperations between Chinese producers and European and American producers. Right now, you can see some Chinese companies are trying to invest in Europe to make those products in Europe and supply those products to European consumers. So I mean, I believe that international cooperation is very much needed for the development of green industries.
So my final question, very briefly from both of you, from now leading up to the election, can we expect any kind of sound discussion regarding the trade policies, for example, on some of the sectors being mentioned by the latest U.S. policies, including the EVs, 100% tariffs? Dr. Li.
Well, as an old Washington hand, I think you will realize that the rhetoric only increases during a political election year. So as I said, we should sit back and just watch the political fights go on. And then when the real election's over, that's when the real policymaking takes place. And I think both President Trump and President Biden have the interest in creating a new trade framework between the United States and China that works for the benefit of both countries.
And Professor Tu, very briefly also.
Yeah, it's a really difficult in an election year to keep trade dialogues, especially after this new tariff increase. So yeah, I think the best opportunity or best possibility is to trying to stabilize the current situation.
Tu Xinchuan, William Li, gentlemen, thank you so much for both of you for joining us.